Chapter 3 What Lies Beneath November 26th, 1993. Later that night, on their return. Outside Doggy's house, the night air was cold. It must have gone 11 o'clock. They traveled some 500 miles getting back, but it felt longer on this return. Sconatach rapped his straw knuckles on the front door that somehow managed a light knocking sound from within the house. It was answered by Anne Brown, Doggy's mother. "Think, love, it's you. I've been worried sick. It's getting late." "It's been a long day. King will be round in the morning," Sconatach explained. Doggy had a tired walk about him as he entered his house. Sconatach turned around to leave, but was stopped. "What's happened, Sconatach? I nearly called the police." "Why so late? Where is my husband?" questioned Anne. "King will be round tomorrow morning," declared Sconatach, as he jumped on his horse and left the scene. The night air was cold. It must have been nearing midnight. A horse with 2 passengers crept up to Mackin's home for the mentally unstable. It was a large, complex building from the outside. Iron gates encircled the building, at least 7 foot high and higher in some places. A man jumped off his horse, with Thomas Brown still unconscious. He pressed a doorbell that appeared to ring from within the asylum. An older man inside the gates approached them. He wore a white coat that seemed to mock his equally white beard. The man still looked half asleep as he tried to make a face out in the dark. "Jonathan, is that you?" He spoke in a confused and cautious tone. "Yes, Jonathan Florence. Mace, I need a favor. I need you to take someone in for only a while." The man, now known as John, spoke in words of need and desperation. The white-bearded man looked at the stranger, Thomas Brown. He could see he was injured badly. "He needs a doctor. Why have you brought him here? What is this all about?" "I will explain later, but you must do this for me. Only for a week. I promise. Here, take these personal belongings of his," John said, handing over some personal possessions that the injured soldier had on him. "I could lose my job for this. But John, I've known you for 12 years, and if you say it is as serious as you look, then I'll do what I can. But for love's sake, I better not be in any more danger than the risks I already know about." Thomas Brown was helped in a wheelchair and wheeled inside, loose bandages still wrapped on the right stub that finished at the elbow. Morning came. Doggy was still asleep, but Anne was downstairs in a dressing gown and drinking coffee. She sipped it like it was comforting, always looking at the clock and then the door. It was 7:30 a.m., but Anne knew Doggy did not sleep in, even past 7 o'clock. As the minutes went by, so did the sun, rising to gradually give light. The next time Anne looked at the clock, it read 8:07. There was a knock at the front door, just as unexpected, and she hurried to open it. King was stood outside, wearing an overcoat and a hat. "A pleasant morning, Anne. Where is Doggy at this time?" "He is still asleep. Come in." Mrs. Brown took King's coat and placed it on a rack. King followed her into the kitchen and closed the door. "Now what is this all about, King?" Anne began. "Yesterday, at the Prickly Thorn War, we suffered a near defeat. I was called to the scene. Doggy must have followed me there. He was instructed to stay behind," King explained. "I hope he hasn't made things worse. Hasn't been his usual self since he's been home," replied Anne. "I'm afraid I didn't help in that matter. I told him at his age he could be ready for such a war, but realized then he was not. I bumped into Thomas, and that's really what this is all about." King's words dropped a darker tone. "What's happened?" Anne looked in disbelief, frightened as to what she might hear next. "The war is over, and I can say the better man won. But Thomas did not return as he was supposed to. I don't know why, but at some point, on his way back here, he decided to stay and fight. Nothing is certain at this point, and I shall give him 6 weeks missing, as normal. I thought he may have remained on base, but if he left, then this is the first place, the only place he would return to. I know it. So what can I wait for?" Mrs. Brown looked on in tears and finished her sentence. I'm a widow." "I'm not saying he's dead, Mrs. Brown. I know this is where he was heading, and I spoke to him before he left. It is unlike him to be in any more trouble than what he can handle." King paused and looked at the tearful woman. "To widen the search, I could make this public." "No! The search must be kept between your people. I have no doubt rumors will be flying around anyway about my husband." "I respect your decision, Mrs. Brown. I must go now. Do not let this worry you any more than it has. I will let you know the moment any news comes in, but right now you have 2 sons to support." King sat up from his chair. "I should note, Doggy was quite the brave one in defeating Ooze. You have 2 special sons, and very special indeed." King turned to leave, but was stopped by Anne. Wait, did they recover my husband's amulet from the scene? Not as yet, but if anything turns up, I will inform you. Good night. King left with a bad feeling. Thomas was probably dead, but he could ill afford to have Doggy drop out. The strange saviors, as they call themselves now, were a team to protect and fight off evil. If Doggy left now, evil could rise above, and that would spell disaster for all of them. Just then, King received a phone call from a radio link he had stored in his coat's deep pockets. King, a body has been found at the Prickly War site. I think it's best you come to the SPF Center straight away. King jumped on his horse and was gone. Defeating ooze, the curse of the prickly thorns. Mrs. Brown sat back, lost in a world of her own. Doggy walked up to his mother, a little uneasy, as if she were asleep and did not want to disturb her. His mother wrapped her arms around his thin frame and held him close. In those few moments, Doggy reached out and grabbed a light bulb left out on the table, and as if by magic, it lit up on its own. Anne stood in amazement, witnessing it all happen from her son's own hands. Doggy himself was a little shocked. Could he now control the ability he had only just discovered? There were times in the past where he felt some sort of electrical pulses run through him, but never fully exploded. He could almost trace it back to the fall of Anne Templeton's reign. Doggy and his brother had a bizarre sensation run through them soon after her demise. He guessed it was easier to summon when pure adrenaline was running through them. I think it's a prophecy King once told me about, Doggy began. The one who will understand is that who finds power, if they can. I know now. I can use the power when it suits me. As the day moved on, the Brown family became more anxious over any more news. They would have to be patient, though the likelihood on Thomas's safe return did not look good. Just outside the town of Enevoder in Hawaii. Meanwhile, within the walls of the SPF Center, strange body find, King was concluding some vital evidence on a forearm they recovered from the grisly murder. It is the blood of Thomas Brown, announced a DNA specialist. The news they were all dreading, and however many times King played it over in his mind, it could never make sense. Thomas Brown had the gift, and although it did nothing to protect him from the immediate danger, there had to be an explanation why he entered the tower at such a great threat. I don't understand. He wouldn't go up there, not at the expense of putting his life on the line and endangering his family. Oh, that I fear now. Doggy and his brother would be the target if evil should discover. A phone rang from within the lab. A scientist answered it. Even without his ear to the phone, King could make out what sounded like trouble and the unmistakable look on the scientist's face. The phone was gently returned to its receiver, and the scientist looked back at King. I think evil already has. He immediately reached for a drawer containing a map and blueprints held with elastic band. The map revealed the SPF Center and 2 other neighboring buildings. Trouble has found its way here. The scientist pointed to the complex furthest from them. Some form of human of enormous proportion. King could only look in terror at the realization something was very wrong. The Serpent Research Facility, King answered, looking at the map at where the trouble started. It is the dawning of a new strange leader, and it appears this one will not be alone. We can't stay here. Sound the distress signal and get those people out of here. A lab technician raised the alarm. The ringing could be heard along every corridor. The scientist, who had only moments ago retrieved the map, grabbed King's shirt to get his attention. He shouted to be heard above the sound of the alarm. They just want you, King. Can't you go your own way? It's beyond that now, King shouted back. They will do whatever they can to get to me, even getting through here first. I'm sorry, I put you all in danger. The scientist looked blankly back at King. Then what now? I must find Doggy and warn him of this new threat. In the meantime, just concentrate on getting your people out of here. With that said, King and the other scientists left through a fire door and fled the area. The SPF Center stood silent. For the first time, the halls were empty. The thought of this human monster breaking in was an ever more present threat. King could do nothing but pray and hope. December 2nd, 1993. A telephone rang from Mace Lester's office. The time was 12:25 p.m. Mace must have known this was a personal phone call, as he was not the immediate contact number. Mace speaking. Hello, Mace. It's John. I will be round to take our friend out, as promised. Well, that might be a problem, John. While he is alive and well here, to the outside world he's dead. The answer from Mace was very firm. No, that there can't be. How has this been proven? A mix of shock and fear overwhelmed John on the other end of the phone. They're burying him after the winter ends. Anyways, An inmate has left our service, so a full-time room has become available. I made arrangements for Thomas to stay here permanently. Well, that has not been easy, but I did not think releasing the dead would go down too well. The locket. You still have the locket? John pursued anxiously. What locket? It was given with the rest of the possessions when I last came. Everything you had given me is being stored safely. Now let's be matter-of-fact about this. John is presumed dead. Mesa, I can't understand how this has happened. Well, it has happened. I don't care to find out how. For love's sake, John, if any of this comes out, I cannot guarantee your freedom. John set down the phone, thinking no one will find out. He would make sure of that.